So, the best coaching session I ever ran, I barely said a word. My client did all the work, and I almost ruined it 3 times by opening my mouth. Master 3 things, and your coaching sessions get dramatically better. Hear what clients aren't saying, get comfortable with silence, and stop rescuing people from being stuck. Those are the coaching session tips that actually move the needle. In this video, I'll walk you through 9 techniques for how you show up in sessions, how you handle difficult clients, and how you keep great clients coming back. But the real reason I barely spoke in that session, it's not the reason you think, and I'll come back to it at the end. First, 3 skills for what happens inside the session: the listening, the silence, and what to do when a client hits a wall. Then, how to deal with the clients who push boundaries and drain your energy. And finally, how to keep your best clients engaged long-term so they actually finish what they started. The first skill, and the one that separates good coaches from great ones, is hearing what your client is not saying. Every coach talks about active listening, but I'm talking about something deeper. I'm talking about catching the wiggle. The wiggle is when a client says one thing, but their energy says something else. They tell you they're excited about a goal, but their voice goes flat. They answer too fast, like they rehearsed it, or they use someone else's words. My husband thinks I should, or everyone says the smart move is. And you can feel it's borrowed, not owned. I had a client who kept telling me she was ready to raise her rates, but each time I asked what she'd actually charge, there was this tiny hesitation. So I asked, "How do you know you're ready?" She went quiet, and then admitted she didn't believe her coaching was worth more. We'd been chasing the wrong problem because I was listening to her words instead of her energy. When something feels off, ask, "How do you know?" or "What makes you sure?" These questions force clients to check whether what they're saying is their own truth or somebody else's. And that distinction changes everything. Now, catching the wiggle is one thing, but what you do after you catch it matters even more. And this is where most coaches get it backwards. When your client goes quiet after a big question, every instinct in your body screams to fill that space, but don't. That silence is the most productive part of your session, and you will kill it the second you speak. I used to panic during silences. I'd jump in with a follow-up question or rephrase what I just asked, and my client's face would shift from deep thought back to surface-level answers every single time. I was stealing their breakthroughs because I was uncomfortable, so I trained myself to count silently, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, sometimes 15, and just wait. Almost every time, what came out of that silence was more honest than anything I could have prompted. Silence gives your client space to actually think, not perform, not people please, just think. And the silence that feels awkward to you feels like freedom to your client. So now you've got 2 tools, hearing the wiggle and holding space through silence. But there's a third wall that every coach hits, and how you handle it determines whether the session goes somewhere real or stalls out completely. Your client says, "I don't know," and your instinct is to rescue them, rephrase, offer options, fill the gap. But that rescue reinforces the block. So the first move is to do nothing. Give them the silence we just talked about, because sometimes, "I don't know," really means I'm not ready to say what I know out loud yet. If silence doesn't break it open, try, "What if you did know?" You're not asking them to commit to an answer. You're asking them to imagine having one, and that shift is enough to get them moving. Another version is, "What do you reckon?" Lower pressure, because it invites a guess instead of demanding a conclusion. And "what else?" is the most underrated follow-up in coaching. It assumes there's more, and that assumption alone pulls something to the surface. So that's 3 session skills: hearing what's underneath, holding silence, and moving past the "I don't know" wall. But being brilliant inside a session only matters if you can handle what happens between sessions. And sooner or later, you're going to get a client who tests every boundary you've set. Every coach has had at least one client who made them question whether they should have become a coach at all. The one who cancels 20 minutes before a session. The one who sends voice memos at 10 at night. the one who tries to negotiate the rate after saying yes. The instinct is to stay flexible, but every exception you make trains your client to expect exceptions, and that flexibility will quietly wreck your practice. The fix starts before the problem shows up. Set your policies in the first conversation: advance payment, a 24-hour cancellation rule, clear terms about between-session communication, and put them in writing. I set mine up on Paperbell, so each package spells out exactly what's included. My clients know the rules before they pay, and that eliminates most boundary issues before they start. If you offer between-session support, make it explicit with clear limits. 2 voice memos per week, up to 5 minutes each, is a boundary. I'm here for you anytime is an invitation to burnout. But sometimes you set firm boundaries and the client is still difficult. And that's where most coaches make the wrong diagnosis, because they assume the problem is the client. Pay attention here, because this is the most important coaching session tip in this entire video. I put it right here on purpose. When a client is difficult, when you feel resistance or dread before a session, the first question to ask is not, what's wrong with them? The first question is, what's going on with me? Let me say that again. Before you decide the client is the problem, turn the mirror around. Did you communicate your boundaries clearly, or did you just assume they'd figure them out? Are you triggered by something personal this client keeps surfacing? Are you trying to steer the conversation instead of following where they need to go? These are brutal questions, but every time I've forced myself to answer honestly, I've grown more as a coach than from any training or certification. The difficult client is often a mirror showing you your own gaps. Your unspoken expectations, your need for control, your unresolved stuff showing up in the room. Sometimes the fit really is wrong. A client is disrespectful or not ready for the work, or the chemistry just isn't there. But you won't know that honestly until you've done the self-check first, and if the relationship is still draining you after that honest look, let them go. One difficult client bleeds into every other session on your calendar and eats your ability to show up for the people who actually need you. Letting go of the wrong clients is how you protect the right ones. So we've covered session skills and difficult clients. But there's a third piece most coaches overlook, and it's the difference between a client who finishes their package and one who quietly disappears. Retention isn't about being a great coach in the room, although that obviously helps. Retention is about what happens in the days between sessions, because that's where momentum either builds or dies. I had a client who'd show up every session on fire, real insights, clear action steps, and then come back the next week and basically start from scratch. All that progress lived only inside the session because nothing carried it forward. And that was my failure, not hers. The first thing that changed my retention was setting clear milestones. Not vague goals like build confidence, but specific markers. Book 3 discovery calls by our next session, or draft your group program outline by Friday. When clients can see their own progress, they stay motivated. And celebrating wins together reinforces the value of coaching in a way that conversation alone doesn't. The second thing is checking in between sessions. A 2-line text, "Hey, how did that discovery call go?" takes 30 seconds and shows your client you're invested even when the clock isn't running. That between-session touch changes everything, because coaching stops being a weekly event and becomes an ongoing relationship. And the third retention tool is personalized resources. Not a generic reading list, but something specific to what your client is working through right now. An article that connects to their last session, a worksheet for a particular block, a book that fits where they are. I track these in Paperbell alongside each client's session notes, so I know what I've sent and what landed. Clients who feel seen don't leave. Remember at the beginning I said my best session was the one where I barely spoke, and that the reason wasn't what you'd think? It wasn't because I'm naturally gifted at knowing when to be quiet. It was because I'd finally learned all of this: the listening, the silence, the self-check, the follow-through. I got out of my own way, and my client did the rest. That's what these coaching session tips point toward. The coaches who last aren't the ones with the fanciest tools. They're the ones who keep doing these fundamentals when it would be easier to wing it. Pick one thing from this video and try it in your next session. If you want your client management organized so you can focus on the actual coaching, check out Paperbell. It's free to start, and you can set up packages, scheduling, and session notes in an afternoon. Links in the description.